Runes of Kof-Kol. The Runes of Kof-Kol show up as a named spell in Spider-Man No Way Home, where Strange attempts a massive memory wipe so the world will forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man. This isn't without very steep risks. Wong explicitly warns Strange that the spell can shake the fabric of reality, emphasizing how unknown and dangerous it really is. In the movie, Peter keeps interrupting and changing the spell while Strange is casting, which corrupts the enchantment and rips cracks in reality. That corruption is what drags villains and visitors in from other universes. To contain the damaged magic, Strange traps the corrupted casting inside an ancient device called the Machina di Cadavus before he attempts the ritual to reverse it. You'd think he'd be very careful with something so volatile, right? Strange casually mentions he's used the runes before, probably in a life or death battle, or so you'd think. It was actually the full moon party at Kamartaj. That's right, this insanely dangerous spell that nearly collapsed the multiverse once got rolled out at what was basically a mystical frat party. Still, it shows the kind of nuclear-level magic he has in his arsenal. Images of Ikonn. The Images of Ikonn allow Strange to create magical duplicates of himself, confusing enemies by overwhelming them with illusions. Its most notable appearance came in Avengers Infinity War, when Strange split into dozens of mirror-like copies to swarm Thanos during their duel on Titan. Each duplicate attacked at once, forming an elaborate trap that even managed to restrain Thanos momentarily until he shattered the illusion with the Power Stone. It's one of Strange's best ways to completely overwhelm an opponent. That's because, unlike usual duplication techniques, this one doesn't create fakes. They're all genuine copies of Strange, which means he can summon an army in a second if he wants to. Case in point, Thanos. And that was with all the Infinity Stones. Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. The Crimson Bands of Cyttorak are easily one of Doctor Strange's coolest spells because they're not just some random magic ropes. Forged in Babylon, these come straight from Cyttorak himself. In Marvel lore, Cyttorak is this ancient demon god, worshipped for his unstoppable strength, and in the comics, Strange has used these to restrain monsters like Juggernaut, the Scarlet Witch, and even the Hulk. So when Strange casts this spell, he's literally pulling that raw, destructive power into chains that can hold down almost anyone. We first see it in Doctor Strange when he uses it against Caecilius in the New York Sanctum, trying to wrap him in the band only for him to defend it with his sword and pull Doctor Strange in closer. Then, in Infinity War, Strange pulls them out again during the Titan battle with Thanos. You actually see the Mad Titan struggling against those restraints. Shields of Seraphim. The Shields of Seraphim are one of Strange's most reliable defensive spells, and they've shown up in some of his biggest battles. These shields come from the Seraphim, celestial beings of light and protection that sorcerers can call on for defense. Strange first used them to block Caecilius's attacks, summoning those glowing golden discs on his forearms. But where they really shine is in Infinity War and Endgame. Doctor Strange first showed its defensive potential when he protected Iron Man, Spider-Man, and himself as the Ebony Maw's ship crashed on Titan. A historical film moment was when the shields came in Endgame. When Thanos rained down missiles from his ship, every single sorcerer on the battlefield summoned them at once. Dozens of golden shields appeared in the sky, layering over each other like a massive protective dome, holding back a storm of destruction that would have wiped out the Avengers instantly. That scene showed just how handy having a Sorcerer Supreme and company on your side during a war can be, because if it wasn't for Strange and the rest of them, Endgame would have been an hour shorter. Bolts of Balthakk. You can't talk about Strange's best attacks without bringing up the Bolts of Balthakk. In Infinity War, when he faces off against Thanos on Titan, this is the moment where Strange stops playing defense. He starts firing off streams of searing orange energy, chaining them through portals to hit Thanos from every angle. What makes it even cooler is where that power comes from. Balthakk is one of the principalities. These are ancient mystical beings that sorcerers can call upon for strength. Think of them like the power banks of the universe. Strange isn't just creating energy out of nowhere. He's channeling Balthakk's own might through his spell work. That's what gives it that overwhelming force. Winds of Watoomb. The Winds of Watoomb are one of Doctor Strange's most recognizable and versatile mystical abilities, allowing him to manipulate air currents and create controlled vortexes with immense precision. The spell is typically conjured through complex circular hand movements that summon glowing glyphs, channeling raw elemental energy into focused streams of wind strong enough to repel attacks, disarm enemies, or redirect environmental forces. During the attack on Greenwich Village, Strange used the Winds of Watoomb when he noticed an alien spacecraft hovering over New York City and generating a violent windstorm. Acting quickly to protect the city, he cast the spell to disperse the turbulent winds and stabilize the area, showcasing both his control and responsiveness in crisis situations. Later, during the Battle of Earth, the spell proved crucial once again. When the lake surrounding the Avengers compound threatened to flood the battlefield, Strange summoned the Winds of Watoomb to manipulate the onrushing water into a massive spiraling vortex, preventing it from sweeping across the battleground. It takes delicate control to use sorcery on such a technical scale. Luckily, Strange is a prodigy in the field. Mirror Dimension. This isn't just a bolt of energy, a materialized structure, or a one-off attack. It's actually an entire separate world. Sorcerers use this for many different things, often to train and advance their skills in a safe and isolated environment, but it has a lot of combat practicality. For example, to keep the New York Sanctum from being destroyed by Caecilius and his zealots, Doctor Strange pulled everyone into the Mirror Dimension, sealing the fight away from the real world. In Avengers Infinity War, during the battle on Titan, Doctor Strange opened a portal to the Mirror Dimension to shield himself from Thanos' Power Stone blast. He then tried to turn the tables by hurling the portal at Thanos, attempting to trap him inside. But Thanos shattered the dimensional gateway using the Power Stone's energy and followed up with the Space Stone, crushing the fragments together into a miniature black hole that he launched back at Strange. It's pretty impressive that the spell was able to block a concentrated blast from the Power Stone, even if it shattered. In Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange pulled Peter Parker into the Mirror Dimension while Peter was carrying the Machina di Cadavus. Inside, Strange took full control of the warped environment, twisting reality around them as Peter tried to get away, tumbling through a collapsing mall and a kaleidoscopic version of New York City. What's really interesting about this is that Strange used it together with the portals he creates through the Sling Ring, causing a train from the real world to literally ram into Peter as it entered the Mirror Dimension. This was a pretty versatile display of his skill with manipulating the Mirror Dimension. In Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, Wanda Maximoff, corrupted by the Darkhold, arrived at Kamar-Taj furious that Doctor Strange refused to hand over America Chavez. After breaking through the defenses, she confronted Strange, who told her she'd have to go through him first. She agreed, only to discover that the Strange in front of her was an illusion, and that he had trapped her inside the Mirror Dimension. Instantly, Wanda found herself surrounded by endless reflections stretching in every direction, each one showing her face from a different angle. Massive shards of glass closed in, boxing her inside a tightening cage. When she fired her hex bolts, they ricocheted wildly, nearly striking her in return. But the Scarlet Witch wasn't contained for long. Using her chaos magic, she slipped her fingers between the glass shards and turned the solid surfaces into liquid. Through those warped reflections, she connected to the real world, using nearby pools of water as portals. She began pulling sorcerers out one by one, disrupting their synergy. Realizing this, Strange, Wong, and Chavez frantically covered every reflective surface in sight. But when Chavez stared too long into a pool of water, Wanda found her opening. She warped her body through the reflection, twisting free from the Mirror Dimension and reappearing in the real world. It was the first and only time somebody figured out a way outside of the Mirror Dimension, and that covers it for Strange's biggest named spells. Don't think that's all he can do though, because there's plenty of tools still left in the kit we haven't covered, but that's another video for another day. Make sure you don't miss it by subscribing and staying tuned for all things Marvel.